What's going on, guys? This is Tony with Urban Girl Scout Media, living the dream as always and working on another one of those 25 videos for Christmas. The season is right, and let's talk about what is likely going to be a popular gift this holiday season. That is the PlayStation Classic. So the list has been released. I waited quite some time to have any sort of response. My initial reaction when they announced that we were going to get a PlayStation Classic and they only gave us 4 or 5 games, the games they gave us were not great to begin with. So I did say in conversations with people that I believe they had issues or that maybe the list wasn't all that spectacular. And here we are. Now, today I'm looking at the list. We got 20 games. We're going to go down this alphabetically. And just going to kind of give what I remember from childhood and what I think right now. I will start off with this. Much like if you're a Magic the Gathering fan, when they do master sets, I do not give a lot of credit for common sense answers. There's certain games on here that absolutely should have been included, and it's correct that they were included. So, with that being said, you can hear the dog eating in the background too. Of course, it's the time for her to do her thing. She has to get some airtime. But let's go ahead and let's go right on down the list. First, we got Battle Arena Toshiden or some shitten like that. I don't really remember much of this game. Matter of fact, I don't really care much for this game. I got nothing on it. Don't care. Cool Borders. So Cool Borders 2 is the next game. I'm pretty happy to see this on here. Few reasons. One, jumping ahead, there is no Tony Hawk. I understand licensing. I get that. We're going to put on some Miles Davis too in the background. See if that maybe drowns out the dog a bit. Yeah, some smooth jazz. So Cool Borders 2, no Tony Hawk. I was a little disappointed to see just Cool Borders 2. There was a lot of extreme sports games from the time that I think they could have had an easier time getting some contracts to and licensing agreements, but you know, it is what it is. Another friend of the channel that I was able to talk to about this system brought up a good point that they believe the first and the third Cool Borders was much better than the second one. I'm inclined to believe and agree with them because I do remember Cool Borders 1 distinctively, and I do remember Cool Borders 3 distinctively. I don't remember putting a lot of time into the second one, and I was a big fan of the series, so I'm inclined to believe them based on what I remember from my childhood. Next game up, we have Destruction Derby. I don't remember much, don't care much, just kind of another driving game. Final Fantasy VII, so I hate to say it, guys, but this channel right now believes that the Final Fantasy series is a wee bit overrated. And yeah, maybe a video someday down the road after the new year we talk about why I just personally don't care for Final Fantasy. However, if it was going to be a system release like this and you can put a Final Fantasy on there, there's a large enough fan base where it would make sense. Final Fantasy VII is a hard game to find in good condition. It's a 2 or 3 disc game anyways, isn't it? So maybe even more. I'm not sure. That's how long it's been since I've even held it physically. But I definitely, it was going to be that or Tactics. I mean, you knew when there was talk of a PlayStation Classic, if you didn't see the list right away when you heard about it, that has to be in your mind that Final Fantasy is going to make its way on that list. So, and then another game that kind of falls in that same category, and another game that falls into that, I guess I should have said this about Final Fantasy, it's a common sense add-in. But the next game on our list that, again, is a common sense add-in, Grand Theft Auto. Okay, if you didn't play Grand Theft Auto, and you were playing on the PlayStation when it was, things were coming out as a release, and you weren't you didn't experience that, you missed out. I don't care how crappy it is now by today's standards. That was a great game. But it is a game that you absolutely have to include. There's no excuse not to. So I'm not going to give them too much credit. So these next two games, Intelligent Cube and Jumping Flash, couldn't give a rip less about. We're just going to move on past them. They've already taken up enough time. Metal Gear Solid, that's a pretty easy include in my opinion. That was a flagship of that system. And it still has games coming out today. Really popular series. Mr. Driller, kind of in the same category as Intelligent Cube and Jumping Flash. They've already taken up too much of my time. Oddworld Abe's Odyssey. Good include here. That probably makes up for some missing titles. And if you believe the rumors that they're going to, or maybe it's actual fact, I don't know. I'm only focusing on what's released here. But there's talk that there's going to be another system that takes advantage of the next generation of the PlayStation 1 that we had. But Oddworld Abe's Odyssey is a good include. Very happy about that one. That's one of the few games that when I looked at it, I was just happy to see that. There's people who need to play that game. So I'm glad to see that is being put on this initial release. So up next, let me take a sip of the old beverage here. I think we're about halfway done. So up next we got the best we could get because we couldn't get Crash Bandicoot. We got Rayman. So we got Rayman, and I don't know what else we can say. It is what it is. Not the greatest include, but imagine if we didn't have that, you wouldn't really have that kind of Crash Bandicoot, Super Mario, Sonic the Hedgehog, like each platform type. Hopefully, if there is another PlayStation Classic that comes out, we do get that Crash Bandicoot experience, because that's another game that people need to experience that. I know it's just put on the PS4, but not everyone owns a PS4. Let's just be honest. So, up next, this one's going to be kind of a coin flip for me. Resident Evil Director's Cut. So, I'm super happy they put this on here. I do own the PlayStation 1 copy of it, so it's not like it's something that if I own this system eventually, I would benefit from this game. But it's a great game. Another flagship of the system. But it also kind of feels like one of those common sense includes based on where we're at on the list so far. That's just my take on it. So that's just something I took away when I saw that. Is I'm happy, but also based on what we've seen so far in the overall list, it kind of felt like it was a requirement. Revelations Persona. I vaguely remember this as a kid, and I didn't want to jump back and do any research to try and sound like I had this great memory of the game. Vaguely remember it. Don't have much to say. Maybe it's a great game, and I'm missing out. Ridge Racer Type 4, another decent driving game, no complaints there. Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo. I don't remember this game at all, and honestly, it doesn't sound fun. I'm not going to look it up. Something about Puzzle Fighter, I don't know. That doesn't sound fun. Siphon Filter, common sense include. I'm not going to give you credit where credit is not due. Because again, to this point, look, we have 4 games left to list off. To this point, there is nothing that is truly, just truly great. That's made this great. So Siphon Filter was an absolute necessity, and again, if they're only doing one generation or if they're going to do 2 different releases, it has to be on one of them. It's one of the flagship games. Tekken 3, I'm upset that we don't get a real Street Fighter game. Maybe Puzzle Fighter 2 is a real Street Fighter game. I just don't remember that. But Tekken 3, Tekken is not a bad series, but man, Tekken just had a rough go. Think about it for a second. They had Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, Bloody Roar, man, if you go deep into the tracks, you had Killer Instinct. I mean, there's just so many great fighter games that Tekken 3 has a hard time, in my opinion, really making that top, 2 or 3 ranking. But they do give us Tekken 3, and yeah, not bad. Good fighting game. Alright, so this one I think there might be some disagreements about. I'm curious to see if anyone puts any comments on it at all. Don't get a lot on the channel. Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six. So I think this is a good include. I enjoyed the Tom Clancy games when I was growing up. Rainbow Six, Ghost Recon. Those were pretty important games to me, at least. So I like that they put it on here. And I thought it was kind of a gem. I really did. I was like, hey, that's kind of a gem. Pretty interesting. Next game, my absolute favorite game that they've put on this PlayStation Classic is Twisted Metal. Man, y'all need to get out there and start playing the Twisted Metal as much as possible, and just get out there and do it. Any one of them is good. They each have their own pluses and minuses. You could have put any Twisted Metal on here. I honestly would have preferred to see Twisted Metal 3. I think that's one that has Axel on the cover, the dude with the wheels for arms. I'm pretty sure it's 3. Whichever one he's on, that was my favorite of the PlayStation ones. So I should look these up, but I just kind of like doing these impromptu. And then the last game is Wild Arms. Again, another one where I vaguely remember it. Nothing negative to say. I know that a couple of people I've talked to are happy to see it on there. It was part of the initial first 4 or 5 games that were released or kind of spoiled. So we knew this for a while, so it's not like it was a huge shocker. So that's the list. We got 20 of them. If I had to say my top 3 or 4 from this list overall, going from, let's say, the number 1 overall is going to be Twisted Metal. Number 2 would probably be Grand Theft Auto. I'm really happy that that's on there. Number 3, I'm going to go Siphon Filter. I think that's a really good game. 4, I'll go with Oddworld. And then probably the 5th best game on this, in my opinion, at least. I'm not saying Final Fantasy, because fuck that goddamn game. Looking through this list one more time. I kind of want to pick a game that I said I didn't like just to be a jerk. I'd actually probably have to go Metal Gear Solid, looking at this list. So overall, out of the 20 games, those are my favorite 5, going from top to bottom. And then overall review of the system, I'm not impressed. I would probably give it a 6 out of 10, maybe a 7 out of 10, depending upon how you feel about some of these games, depending upon what games you own, depending upon just things like that. What's going to matter the most to me about if I ever decide to buy this is the mod options. We do have a friend of the channel who is quite handy at these things, and every now and then lets us benefit from that by borrowing or using equipment. So there's definitely other games I'd love to play, and if it's mod compatible, whatever terms I want to use, I would absolutely welcome the idea of getting one of these. But at this time, I'm just not sold that this is worth $100. The Super Nintendo Classic I was able to get and had modded within a month. I think I have 90 something games on there. Maybe I should count to make sure, but for this right now, $100 for this system, when I have probably 4 or 5 of these games, the ones I really want, or I've played them and just haven't replaced getting them because it's just haven't run into them. I'm not disappointed, but I'm definitely not satisfied. And it does lead me to something that I want to complain about with these reissued classics. Nobody who listens to this can convince me otherwise, and I don't care about the licensing, I don't care about the contracting. The Super Nintendo and the PlayStation are both greatly impacted and weakened by their lack of sports games. Simple as that. I don't care about contracts. Games like Blitz, Jam, Hang Time, things like that. Those games deserve to be on these systems. Same thing with the wrestling games. Those are just, I mean, we're getting into, like, now we're getting into the time where wrestling games took that next step into right into this great era of playability. I can't envision continuing to not have these on there. That's just my opinion, though. So like I said, overall, 6, maybe 7 out of 10. I'm not gonna get one quite yet. Probably just gonna hold off on it and just kind of see what the future brings. If there is a second generation, there's a lot of games that are missing that I think would make sense. A lot of games that if they really just thought about it, they would have put on. So my first thoughts were Crash Bandicoot, Mega Man, and Ape Escape are two series on the PlayStation that would have benefited. Spyro the Dragon. Again, I said Final Fantasy VII is on here, but Tactics is another one that could have been added easily. Tomba, whatever his name was. Tomb Raider. I don't know if you guys ever heard of that game. You know, I did write down because I have a lot of friends who enjoyed them, but Bushido Blade is another great game that could have been on here. Where's just the straight up Street Fighters? And then I'm trying to remember if I said Spyro already, but Spyro the Dragon and Crash Bandicoot aren't on here either. So those are the ones that really stood out to me. And again, the sports, the fighting. There's just some really great games I think you could have added here, and this would have gone to the next level. So I don't know. Tell me what you guys think. I'm looking forward to kind of seeing how this rolls out. And then here's the next question. What classic system is next? Do you think that the Nintendo 64 is going to get that reprint? Do you think that there's enough games for it? You know, we did a video on that about 6-7 months ago. Do you think that maybe the GameCube could be something down the road? I know we'd be skipping a generation, but the GameCube could be an easy one. I don't know if the PlayStation 2 could do it. I think we're kind of getting to that point where we're running out of. It was a nice run, but they're gonna have to figure out something new. So, but yeah, guys, that is what it is, and it's all that it is. And if it wasn't that, it would have to be something else, right? That was deep. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. My name is Tony. This is Urban Girl Scout Media. We are living the dream as always, and we always appreciate you listening.